And so it begins, ladies and gentlemen. The first domino has fallen when it comes to the Detroit Lions and their revamp for 2025. I informed you guys that this was going to be the year of turnover for the Detroit Lions, that they were going to have the most turnover that you've seen under Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, because we have reached year 4. We're going into year 5. And a lot of those first first draft picks, if you weren't a first rounder, your contract is over. And this is only the beginning. What am I referring to? Well, shout out to the guys at Detroit Sports Podcast. You know them, John Macron and all those guys. Says former Lions tight end James Mitchell is now with the Carolina Panthers. And you might be wondering, how can this happen when James was playing on the Detroit Lions and there is no, that we're still in the season? And it can happen because James Mitchell was on the practice squad. And as we went over yesterday, the Detroit Lions, or actually earlier this morning, but it happened yesterday, that the Detroit Lions signed 11 players to future reserve contracts. And most of those players were on the practice squad. James Mitchell was one of the players that was on the practice squad, but was not re-signed with the Detroit Lions, which makes him a free agent, and he can sign on a team. And he signed before the start of free agency. So he was not on the 53-man roster, which is why he can sign with another team. Now, those guys that are on 53-man rosters, they have to wait until the 12th of March. But the first domino begins to fall. Now, I can kind of go off on Brad Holmes, but I won't, because James Mitchell, when we picked this guy, I didn't understand why we did it. He never really did anything for the Detroit Lions. He literally, let's look at his stats real quick. For the 2024 NFL season, he has no stats at all. A 5th-round pick 177. He was coming off of an injury back then, and let's see what he was able to do in his career with the Detroit Lions. He played in no games in 2024, as far as he has no recorded stats. I saw him out there. I want to say he was elevated once or twice, but he has no recorded stats. In 2023, he played in 15 games. He had 2 receptions. In 2022, he played 14 games for 11 receptions and did absolutely nothing in his time with the Detroit Lions. I'm not going to call a 5th-round pick a bust. I'm not going to be too critical, but this is when the dominoes are going to start to fall, and you're going to see an overhaul. You're going to see an overhaul. Now, this guy was a 2022 pick, so he was actually brought in that same draft. He was actually drafted. You ready for this? He was drafted before Malcolm Rodriguez. He was drafted before James Houston. So now James Mitchell joins Chase Lucas and James Houston as Detroit Lions, who are no longer on the team. And this is only the beginning. We're going to see a lot of turnover, not only from that 2021 NFL draft, but 2022, 2023. I hate to do this because I know it can seem unfair, but we could have a serious conversation about Broderick Martin not being on the team in a few short weeks, months. We might get to that point, especially if Aaron Glenn is leaving. And then you're talking about maybe our defensive line coach could possibly leave as well. So we're going to have a situation. If Tyrell Williams leaves, and Aaron Glenn, that's crazy, right? That could spell disaster for Broderick Martin, and I could be making a video on him in just a few short weeks or months. So James Mitchell, no longer part of the Detroit Lions roster. He is the first piece of many more dominoes to come when it comes to draft picks that will not be. Now, if you were on the 53-man roster, we're not going to see any of that stuff until March. But so Broderick Martin, because he was on the 53, he can't be signed. So you guys know what I'm saying. When that stuff opens up, when March comes and that opens up, then there's a good chance he's not on the team. I mean, like I said, there's a video coming out later today that was actually recorded before this one. It was going to come out, but I saw the tweet from my man at, John Macron and those guys over at Detroit Sports Podcast had to get this out because this is the beginning. This is news that we need to know because the dominoes start to fall, and there's a lot of that 2021 draft, and we've discussed this, guys that should come back probably won't come back. And James Mitchell, I don't want to call the guy a waste. I don't. But here's what I will say, and I'll let you make your own decisions. If you look at it like this, we drafted James Houston, we drafted Malcolm Rodriguez after this guy. One of those guys is still on the team. One didn't initially make the 53-man roster, but then was put on a 53-man roster, is no longer on the team. But the guy in James Mitchell that was drafted before both of those guys never made an impact. You're not going to hit on every draft. You're not going to hit on every pick. I understand that. I accept that. I'm just asking, can we say that this was a waste? Would you call James Mitchell a wasted pick? 5th-round pick, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. The defense has been so shot. You know, when we drafted him, I'm like, why did we take another tight end? I think we still had Shane. We still had, Brock Wright, and we're drafting another tight end? Another tight end. So, as a matter of fact, when we drafted him, we still had TJ Hockenson at the time. We still had TJ Hockenson because TJ Hockenson was traded at the trade deadline of 2022. He was traded at the trade deadline in 2022. So I'm saying to myself, why are we, maybe because we knew we were going to trade, but James didn't do anything. In 2022, he played in 14 games. He had 113 receptions. So even after TJ Hockenson left, let me look at his game log. Let me see what did he do in 2022? Because TJ Hockenson was traded. Let's pull this up. TJ Hockenson, he was traded at the trade deadline, which we know is sometime in November. So let's say, I think it was right around here. So after that, he had, let's just put it on, let's say by this time, he was the tight end. But he wasn't like we were playing, I think it was Brock Wright, because that was the year that we missed out on the playoffs. We started off 1-6 and then went 8-2 down the stretch and just missed out on the playoffs. So I don't want to call it a wasted pick because of where it was, but when you consider that Malcolm Rodriguez and both James Houston made more of an impact as 6th-round picks than a 5th-round pick in James Houston, is something that you got to talk about. And we're going to start to see, and I keep on stressing this, it only makes sense. We've got 33 free agents. We've got the end of Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell's first draft. And outside of Penei Sewell, which is the only 1st-round pick we had, everyone else is not under contract unless they were extended. And we're going to have, I expect much more turnover. I expect Levi to be gone. I expect Ife Melifonwu to be gone. I expect those things. So we'll see, because Ife, as much as we want him to be, we know what he can be, he hasn't been healthy. And those are things that you have to consider. And as you're going to see in a later video, it's going to be time for Brad Holmes to get away from these injured players. Not to say that if he came in with an injury history, but if you develop one, it's time to move on. You got to be able to be on the field. Imagine if we could have had maybe Ife. Look what happened last year. We still couldn't get to the quarterback last year. We had to blitz safeties, and Ife was that guy. Got the game-sealing interception, the division-sealing interception against Justin Jefferson, or on Justin Jefferson last year. It's going to be a lot of change this year. This channel is made possible by viewers, subscribers, and members just like you. I want to say thank you for allowing me to do what I do. You know what? And you could be anywhere else on YouTube, but you choose to rock with me. I think I'm going to add that in there because I appreciate you. I really do, man. Take my shot, but also give praise as well. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm super petty. You guys are awesome. Take care of yourself and each other. And as always, go Lions.